Thanks, Robin. You know, there very, very rarely are occasions when someone in Washington, D.C. does real reporting and approaches someone powerful, usually having to corner them somehow, and asks a straightforward question. And when you see it happen, it makes you wonder what it would be like if journalists all the time behaved like journalists. And Sam Husseini, among other things, is one of the reasons that alternative voices and people's voices and progressive voices make it onto radio shows and into the media. The Institute for Public Accuracy sends media outlets lists of speakers on topics that are in the news, and it's a tremendous effort. But Sam recently has been producing news. The website is called WashingtonStakeout.com, and Sam is going to show you a few of the clips. And if you're filming a video here in the room this evening and you can't get a good shot of that screen, you can get these clips at WashingtonStakeout.com. Take it away, Sam.
I hope you'll be patient. I hope all of this thing holds together. First, I just want to say a word about Martin Luther King's speech that I just came across that I'd only heard glimpses of. It's even better, in my view, than his Beyond Vietnam speech. In it, he says, "In international conflicts, the truth is hard to come by because most nations are deceived about themselves." And I think that that's true. I was on a panel earlier today on the subject of conspiracy theories about 9/11 came out. And I think that some of these videos that I'll show for you display that, you know, I think the biggest conspiracies are open conspiracies, and they are endemic to nationalism, what Einstein called the measles of mankind. And I sort of take exception with even the National Conference for Media Reform. Again, it's an open problem. The problem is in front of us. I don't think that by confining ourselves to a National Conference of Media Reform, because we desperately need a global dialogue. Sure, I think part of the problem might even be saying a National Conference on Media Reform, because we desperately need a global dialogue. Not that everything is approached globally. Some things are approached locally, some things are approached nationally, but we do need a global dialogue, and I think by limiting ourselves, we might be limiting ourselves from some of the most fundamental problems that we have before us. Let me try to show a couple of these things without getting into too much of a back and forth. I'm not showing these things because I think I did a spectacular job in all of the cases. I'm trying to spark real journalism on the part of the mainstream media, on the part of the independent media, to get beyond preaching to the choir and getting in there and doing journalism, including in Washington, D.C. This is me asking Lee Hamilton about some of the stuff in the Hamilton-Baker report. All right, where the hell are we? Which called on the U.S. to, quote, assist Iraqi leaders to reorganize the national oil industry as a commercial enterprise. And I'm reading from the report. Investment in Iraq's oil sector by the international community and by international energy companies. Are you calling for some sort of privatization?
Oil, of course, is the critical asset in Iraq. It furnishes a very large percentage of the GDP of Iraq. It furnishes a huge percentage of the total revenues of the government. We recommend many things with regard to the oil industry. I think there are as many recommendations on oil as any other feature of it, and you have to look at them as a package. Okay, thanks.
I'm doing the best I can with the volume here with the setup, but
Put the mic down by your speaker.
it's hooked up to the speaker over there, so. Should I play it one more time, or shall I could play it. We got to keep rolling here. I'm happy to hang out after this, and I got about a dozen of these things. This is me questioning Biden about what Ritter said. Biden was chair. Few people remember this. He was chair of foreign relations during the buildup of the Iraq War, and he presided over basically sham hearings. He denies it here, and so does a staffer of his. It's a bit of a chaotic situation. Let me read you what Scott Ritter wrote on July 30th, 2002 about the hearings that you were just about to convene as head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. For Senator, you were head of Foreign Relations at that time as well. For Senator Biden's Iraq hearings to be anything more than a political sham used to invoke a modern-day Gulf of Tonkin resolution equivalent for Iraq, his committee will need to ask hard questions and demand hard facts concerning the real nature of the weapons threat posed by Iraq. Ritter seems to have obviously been correct about this. Do you agree?
What's your question?
You agree that Ritter was right about that? That you presided over hearings, that you didn't ask the necessary
No, I don't agree with that. We did ask.
And in effect, wait for a Gulf of Tonkin
The
resolution?
answer is no, I don't agree with that. Your question, then?
Thank you all very much.
Why isn't Ritter correct, sir? Wasn't it a Gulf of Tonkin resolution in effect?
Have you read the hearing transcripts?
I've read chunks of them. Are you with him? Are you with him?
I'm Tony Blinken.
Hi, Tony.
How are you? What's your name, sorry?
Husseini.
Hey.
Now, so, I mean, what's wrong with that? Wasn't it in effect a Gulf of Tonkin resolution?
Read the hearing transcript.
No.
Every hard
I'm
question
talking
is
to
asked,
you.
all the
No.
answers.
Who
He
was
said there was
who
no
was
yellow
there?
tape.
Who
He
was
said there was
who
no
was there?
aluminum
Who was there? No. Now, you can barely make it out. And I got John Schwartz, a great blogger who's done the best work that I know of just about on weapons of mass destruction, is going to go through the hearing transcripts. But the aide claims that they got into the yellow cake. We got the transcript here, and he said that there were no aluminum tubes. We're not turning up anything like that, and the transcript is going through it. So we'll be following up on that. This one was Negroponte. This is several months ago when he was still Director of National Intelligence. Now he's Assistant Secretary of State. The first part of it, for reasons of time, I've clipped out. There was disinformation that week about Iran, and I challenged him on that, looking forward to the next war. And then I asked him a perennial question. The United States has never acknowledged that Israel has nuclear weapons. Gates sort of implied it at his hearings, but wasn't forthcoming. This is me asking Negroponte, who's head of national intelligence at the time, mind you, this fundamental question. Ambassador, do you know that Israel has nuclear weapons?
I don't want to get into a discussion about.
You can't comment on whether or not Israel has nuclear weapons?
About Israel's nuclear powers. Thank you very much.
How can you expect to have any credibility on the Middle East if you can't say whether or not Israel has nuclear weapons? Mr. Ambassador, you're head of national intelligence and you can't say whether Israel has nuclear weapons? No, he didn't answer the question. If he answered the question, I'd go away. Mr. Ambassador, I just want a simple answer to a simple question. Do you know that Israel has nuclear weapons? We made all of these statements about Iran and Iraq and so on. Everybody knows that Israel has nuclear weapons. You're Director of National Intelligence, and you can't say whether Israel has nuclear weapons? It's ridiculous. How can you have any credibility on the Middle East? How can you have any credibility, Mr. Ambassador? All right. So, we got a bunch of them. I was delighted at this conference to hook up with some local radio folks from Wisconsin because I had a run-in with David Obey, who was head of House Appropriations, and I asked him questions about power of Congress and so on, and he's like, "Oh, I don't got any power," and so on. So it's great to feed this to folks in Wisconsin or his constituents who might have something to say about whether he should stand up in terms of the power of the purse that he's supposed to preside over as head of the Appropriations Committee. I think that there are enormous opportunities to be doing, tough questions, and I think that well, you heard one of the voices on the other journalists here was a reporter for Al Jazeera who was asking totally tough questions of Negroponte. I was trying to get him to do follow-up questions on Israeli weapons of mass destruction and related issues. He wouldn't do it. I think that the international media are falling down on the job in asking these questions. I think the independent media are falling down on asking the tough questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sam, and I am amazed that you did not include the Colin Powell video, the best single piece of journalism I've seen. So go to WashingtonStakeout.com if you want to see Colin Powell asked about his lies at the United Nations, and then wonder why no one else has ever done that.